Hey, this is David Owen.
And this is Marian Cowligowan.
And this is You Show Me Yours, a podcast where a married couple talks about the movies and television that they loved before the first date. And this time I was made to watch The Way.
Yep, because it is after the first date month. And we met in April 2003, if you're counting. And so in April on the podcast, we talk about movies that we've loved after the first date. So today we're talking about The Way, which came out in 2010, which was the year our son was born. And so it doesn't seem that long ago, but that's actually 15 years. Holy smokes. Anyway, it's Martin Sheen and a bunch of ragtag characters take a long walk through Spain. And you might think, why would you watch this? Well, we're going to tell you why. I don't remember when I first came across this. I think I probably watched it because it's Martin Sheen, whom I adore from The West Wing. And the characters are walking this particular pilgrimage path called the Camino de Santiago, which is the Way of St. James. It is of course, I looked it up before and I forgot the exact meaning of it, but St. James of Jesus and the Apostles fame, I believe, took this walk as a ministry path, I believe, and he was buried at what is now the cathedral in Santiago, Spain. And so people in the Middle Ages were like nutso for taking pilgrimages. They would just walk places.
Yeah, they were big into him.
They were nutso. They were crazy go nuts for pilgrimages. Like, yeah, sure, let's go. I got, 6 months and some new shoes and nothing to do here except die of the Black Plague. So sure, let's go somewhere else where it's warmer, Right. So the path to Santiago, which honestly there are like a bazillion paths. You can take, I think, any path you want, but there are some that are more commonly taken than others. They've become very they were sort of like just regular popular for like 1,000 years, and then in the last 50 they've become much more popular, more as a tourism thing than as a strictly religious pilgrimage. And so I think I vaguely knew that the Camino existed, but I don't think that was why I watched the movie. I think it was more for the Martin Sheen of it all. And it's sort of funny to see my version of President Bartlett being a curmudgeon on this, which we will highlight a few moments as we talk about it. So Martin Sheen plays Tom Avery, who's an eye doctor in Ventura, California, and living a very comfortable, sedate, settled life. And it seems not bad, actually. He sees his patients, and then he goes play golf with his friends, and that's about it. Mm-hmm. And he gets a phone call that his son, Daniel, played by Emilio Estevez, who, if you don't know, is Martin Sheen's real life son, has been killed in Spain, or no, France, actually, southern France. And he goes to pick up the body, and he learns that Daniel was killed while walking the Camino. It starts in this particular version, starts in southern France and crosses over the Pyrenees Mountains into Spain, and then goes across northern Spain. And he was like a day into it and was killed somehow. We never really learned how, but I think they said something about bad weather, so who knows? Yeah. And we have some indication that their relationship was not great. I've read various descriptions of the movie that call them estranged. I think just Daniel is much more of a free spirit than Tom is. So as a way of handling his grief about this, Tom says, well, I'm going to walk the Camino, that Daniel couldn't. And he just sort of takes off with all the supplies that Daniel had, but not knowing much more. And he's kind of intending to do it by himself, and he's rather gruff and misanthropy. But as apparently the Camino does, or I think any kind of long walk, friendships emerge. And we have him and 3 other pilgrims who are our main characters. Joost, who's from Amsterdam, whose main feature is that he likes to eat everything. Mm-hmm. He says that he's walking the Camino to lose weight, and then promptly orders wine and everything and says, well, you have to have this in Spain. Like, sir, that is yes, that's the problem. And Sarah, who is walking the Camino to quit the cigarettes, she says, but also to sort of process a bad relationship that she's left and That's Aftermath. And then Jack, who honestly is my least favorite, who's a writer from Ireland and apparently is walking the Camino to break his writer's block. And, hijinks ensue and adventures are had and friendships are formed and yada, yada. And at the end, Tom apparently is deserting his patients and just going off and hiking more because the last shot is of him walking through a market, which turns out to be in Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've been trying to show this to you for a long time. I believe one of the previous, after the first 8 months, I said we're going to watch it, and then it'd gone off of Prime or wherever it was by the time we got to it. So I'm glad to be able to show this to you finally. What did you know about either this movie or the Camino beforehand?
Not much.
Okay.
Not much. Probably the movie, probably nothing other than that you had mentioned it a few times. The Camino, just kind of as one of those things that people do, like the Appalachian Trail, Pacific Coast, that sort of stuff, and knowing that that's one of those that gets kind of mentioned in a similar breath to the Appalachian and stuff. But that was it. Yeah, I didn't really know anything about it. Anything about its like purpose. Or why you were doing it, because you're like the Appalachian Trail, you're just walking. It's a trail. Yeah, walk this trail. It doesn't have like at the end. It's not a pilgrimage trail. It's just a trail.
Yeah. Well, and that's the odd thing is so. And I say this even though I'm Catholic, and so ostensibly, were I to do the Camino, which I really would like to, there would be some religious element, but I don't. It doesn't really feel like that would be it for me. And conversely, I think if you want to walk the Appalachian Trail, that feels there seems to be a spiritual element. Because that's, up to 5 months of being roughly by yourself, alone with your thoughts, like that has to have a spiritual effect somehow, whether that's your purpose in it or not. But the Camino appeals to me because you don't have to camp like you do on the Appalachian Trail. There are these little, now this has been in existence for like 1,000 years. So of course they've come up with an industry has grown up around it. There are now, and I should say, I said there are like 1 million ways to Milgram routes that you can take. But this one from southern France over the mountains across northern Spain is the most popular. I think I read something like 2/3 of pilgrims who get to Santiago have taken this route. So, everything that I'm going to say about the Camino is about this route because that's the one that's discussed the most. And that's where the most services for pilgrims and stuff exist. And the one, any guidebook is going to be about this mostly. But so there are little, like hotel is too strong a word, I guess, hostel, called albergues in, I don't know, most little towns. And so you kind of have to plot your route out. But you can, you arrive in the town and you reserve your room. And I think it's like, 20 euros and you get a bed and a shower and dinner and breakfast. And it's very simple, but you are there with a whole lot of other people who are doing the same thing. And, they want to keep you happy, the albergues, so that you tell other people to stay there. And so the food is good and the wine is good and, the company is good and, et cetera, et cetera. But to me, you get to sleep in a real bed, like not a great bed. There's a shot here of one of the bunk rooms, one of the nights. And it's just, 20 rows of bunk beds, like with, cheapo mattresses, but I imagine you're so tired you don't really care. But not a tent and a sleeping bag on the ground, and there's no bears.
Yeah.
And there's bathrooms and you can buy snacks and there are doctors available and, all these things. So like this feels much more civilized than the Appalachian Trail. The downside being that you're in a non-English speaking country, but as we see here, people are from all over and a lot of people speak English and, you make it work. So yeah, I don't remember when I first learned about the Camino. I think I had known it was a thing for a long time, but around the time that I first saw this, I started to think, I'd really like to do that. Partly because, so I'm not an athletic person at all, but I can walk. And what?
It's the way you said.
Well,
but I can walk.
well,
Just and there's just this pregnant pause after it, like you were waiting for me to say something.
yes, you can. Well, good for you.
Whoa, man, can she walk? Folks, let me tell you, if you've never seen someone walk till you've seen this lady.
When she walks, the earth stands. I don't know. Anyway, but I don't know. It would be nice to undertake a physical feat that I can do, because even if anybody could walk this, I think this is about 500 miles. Anybody could do it, but a lot of people don't. So I want to be able to do something that is physically demanding, but is still within my wheelhouse. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm never going to run a marathon. The Appalachian Trail is a difficult hike. Like, you have to squeeze through things, and it's steep hills, and and this is no cakewalk. Like, you're going up and over the Pyrenees, which is, and this character is killed.
Yeah.
Somehow, we never really find out. So, like, people die. So it's not a cakewalk, but it is, still, it's just walking. And so I feel like I could do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the Appalachian Trail has become a bit demystified over the last 5 or 10 years as an industry has grown up around it. There are an increasing number of places where you can stop. There are people who do it piecemeal.
Yeah,
they take a week off from work, and they do a week, and then they get picked up and they go back to their life, and then 3 months later, they do another week, and they just keep picking up from the place where they left off.
Well, and actually, so the last book that we read from my book club was about the first woman to through hike the Appalachian Trail. And the book had a lot of the background of the trail, and they didn't really intend it for people to through hike ever. They just thought people were going to do a little bit here and there. And, like the idea that you would take 5 months off of your life and do the whole thing, it was foreign to them. Yeah,
it was kind of one of those things where we're just like, hey, we're gonna put a nice trail through these mountains. And like, at a certain point, we're in Georgia now. Okay, well,
yeah,
they kind of roughly connect together, sort of, because like the Appalachian Trail does not explicitly connect together. Like, there are places where you have to walk on a road for half a mile to get from one piece of it to the other piece. So like it connects in air quotes, but like it's not this one contiguous thing that is a trail. Like, there are points where you're walking
the spine of the mountains.
Yeah, you're walking through a town
to
get from one part of it to another. It's I mean, it's like when you ride around a city on a greenway or something. Like, there are parts of it that are picturesque, and then there's the part of it that goes right by the light rail track.
Yeah,
and
yeah. Sorry, I keep hitting the mic. I don't know why.
You get it closer. Or
I'm out of practice. I don't know. So. Yeah. With the Appalachian Trail, it always amuses me so I've lived, within striking distance of the Appalachians now for 25 years. And it's not one long mountain range. It's these little ones that are sort of stuck together, that all together are referred to as the Appalachians. But people talk about, the Great Smokies, the Blue Ridge, the Adirondacks, the Poconos, the, whatever. And so it's funny to think of, like if you hear about it, you would think it's just one long trail and you're just up on the peak of them for 2,000 miles, whatever it is. But it's a lot of up and down and around, and So, I think I've passed the moment in my life when I could do the Appalachian Trail, even though people much older than me have done it.
Oh yeah, you just got to
train.
But
it's just the camping. I'm just like, no, I don't. I need time to recover after I sleep on the ground for a night. So the Camino is appealing because there's a mattress, a crappy mattress, but a mattress nonetheless. And there's wine, and there's drugstores, and probably Wi-Fi, and
cell coverage probably at this point.
Speaking, I mentioned my book club read a book about the trail. If you were interested in long walks or the trail or anything like that, the book that we read is Grandma Gatewood's Long Walk, I think. Very good. A lot that I didn't know about her. I knew that she was the first woman who did it, and she just like went with sneakers and no supplies and everything, but like she has a great backstory. So definitely read that if you're interested. Anyway, back to the movie and the walk in Spain that we're talking about. Yeah. So this was inspired in part by Emilio Estevez, and I think his son walked part of the Camino themselves, and as any storyteller, you see that that's ripe for storytelling. And then the script gives credit to him and also somebody named Jack Hitt, who I guess is a travel writer and wrote a book about the Camino and has lots of stories from along the way. And I imagine a lot of the quirky characters that they meet are just taken directly from that. So, and a lot of that role is put on the Jack character, because the book that he's writing is probably very similar to what the Jack Hitt character, so it's all a little bit of, what do they call that? Romana Clay, where
I don't speak Italian.
That's Greek. Thank you.
Sure.
I find that a little bit frustrating when art is too clearly drawn from life, but it is what it is. So, but lots of quirky characters along the way here. There's an albergue owner who is kind of like, I don't know, a less threatening Norman Bates, sort of.
Kind of, yeah.
He's what was his name? He was El Ramon.
Yeah, something like that. He had.
And they go up to this.
Stamp.
Yeah, they go up to this albergue where there's nobody there, and you have a passport along the way, and you get it stamped at all these albergues that you go to, and I guess any other attractions along the way. And then when you get to Santiago, you turn it in as proof that you have. I think you're considered to have walked the Camino if you walk, 100 kilometers. So you don't really have to do the whole thing, but I think it's a pride thing. But you can show that you have walked this much, and then you get your official diploma, which is in Latin, and it's all very official, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
But yeah, so that Ramon's got his own stamp. And they all check in, and they hear him upstairs in what sounds like a conversation, and it sounds like a rather lusty conversation. And they're like, "Where are we? What are we doing? This place is creepy. What's going on?" And they peek upstairs, and he's like having a chat with himself, where he's playing both roles. He's sort of like serenading an empty chair, and then he sits in the chair and is serenaded too. And they were like, "We're gonna go now."
Smart choice.
Yes. And there's a part where they Tom's backpack is stolen by a gypsy boy, and the father, and he's been carrying Daniel's ashes the whole time and distributing them at little points, and so that's the thing that he cares about. And so he chases him down, and eventually the boy's father learns what happens and brings the backpack back and is very stern about it, and smacks his kid upside the head, and blah blah blah. And I imagine that happens a lot. I thought that was, Tom is stopped for the day and just sort of left his backpack outside the bar, and I was like, you were still in the real world, friend. You can't just do it. But let's see, what do I have in my notes? Yeah, so I'm used to seeing Martin Sheen as President Bartlett.
Oh yeah,
generally just sort of cheerful and kind, and Tom Avery, Dr. Tom Avery, is kind of a grump.
Yeah. Well, I think that's
which I suppose is the point, but he's not very pleasant.
He's not enjoying his life. He's not. You say, it doesn't seem that bad, but at the same time, if that's all he's doing,
Well, he's a widower in his 60s, 70s.
Sure.
I don't know. Well, and that's what
I don't know. It feels to me like the before stuff that you see with him before he's on the Camino is essentially meant to show you that he's kind of given up on living. Not given up on life, but he's given up on living. He's settled into this little routine. He's got these guys that he may or may not even be that much of a friends with.
Yeah, that's
that
true.
He's doing this, just doing this routine.
You don't have to be friends to play golf.
Yeah.
Well, and watching it this time, I was really struck by that stuff. So Daniel is his late 30s, they say. And at some point, it looks to be right after his mother's funeral, because they're both wearing black. He says, I dropped out of my PhD program. I don't want to be an academic anthropologist. I want to go and actually experience these cultures. And so he's going all these different places, and then the Camino is part of it. And I, as someone who is a little older than that, am just thinking, oh my God, you've got to pick something. You are not independently wealthy. You cannot just gallivant around the world and do this, like, I want to live with the people stuff.
Mm-hmm.
At a certain point, you have to pick a way to make a living off of this. Like, and if you want to do what the Jack character is doing and like write about everywhere you're going, okay, that's fine, but that's not what he said.
Sure.
And so Tom is seeing some of the stuff in flashbacks, and there's a part where he's driving Daniel to the airport, I think to go to the Camino, right?
Or to go. I don't know if
Something.
he doesn't seem to know that he's on the Camino.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I think he's just driving to the airport
Some
to
adventure,
go on his next
yeah.
adventure.
And Daniel is kind of getting at him like, you could leave your patients, you could, you come with me, blah, blah, blah. And he says this line that it's like, it sounds profound at first, but the more I think about it, I'm like, no, I don't like that at all. Tom says, this is the life I choose and it makes me happy or something like that. And Daniel is like, you don't choose a life, Dad, you live it. Which, again, I'm like, that sounds good, but like, I don't know. Life is not all fun. You have to do something to pay the bills. And I'm aware I sound like a retired eye doctor living in Ventura who golfs, but like, I don't know. Like at a certain point, you have to be practical about stuff.
I mean, maybe, I guess, but I think there is this. One of the takeaways from the Tom character is potentially that he is that he did that stuff, right? He had a kid,
Mm-hmm.
he had a wife, he lived up to his responsibilities, and he's past the point in his life where he needs to do that. He surely has plenty of money saved up from his eye doctrine, and like he doesn't need to choose that life anymore. He needs to live the life that he has left. I'm big, like I tell you all the time, I'm retiring as soon as I can.
Mm-hmm.
The moment that the need for that, like there is somewhere in, not in real existence, but in my head, there is a graph. And when this line crosses this point, I'm retiring.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want to get busy living or get busy dying.
I don't know.
And that's like, it's not that what you're saying is not a valid point, but there is a point where you've earned the ability to, like, I think our parents earned that ability, like start living your life. Like you spent a lot of time working, paying the rent, paying the mortgage, just live it. My mom recently retired, not because she wanted to, but because she just isn't capable of working anymore. And she is not going to get to do a lot of living of that late life that we're all promised. So you can be Daniel and worry where you're going to sleep or where your next meal might come from, and maybe be a lot happier, or you can run the rat race.
Well, I don't think that having, the rat race means that there's no happiness, that there's no actual living. Like, and I say this as someone who, the most of the jobs that I have held and that I hope to hold for the rest of my working life have had some degree of fulfillment in them. Like, not entirely and not all the time, but it's not like I'm, stamping plates in a factory. It's not drudgery. It was stuff that I really enjoyed. And so I don't necessarily see your working life is the drudgery and then you get to enjoy life at the end. The enjoyment is woven through for me. And one would assume that Tom's eye doctoring to some degree fulfilled him. I mean, he doesn't seem fulfilled because he's with a patient who admits that she memorized the eye chart.
Yeah.
And he says, you have to go to the DMV to renew your license. She says, I memorized that one too, which is terrifying and get me off the road around these old people.
Yeah. But yeah, I receive zero fulfillment from my job. Zero. And I never, so here's a principal difference between you and I and our upbringing. Mm-hmm. My dad worked in a furniture factory and my mom worked in a plastics factory. My grandfather worked in a bus factory. My uncle worked in a bus factory. I have one relative, one uncle, who went to college and is now a music professor. But he spent a lot of time uncertain about his future. There was a point where he just worked at Circuit City.
He did? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
And
I can't imagine that.
and now, he's in this place in life where he wants to be and he enjoys and he is probably fulfilled by his work. That expectation was never set for me in any way. Everybody I knew who worked a job that they hated, that was menial manual labor. And that's how I started out in the workforce, working. My first job was scraping labels off of these plugs that went into pipes so that they could be recycled and used again.
Where was that job?
It was in high school. It was it was blink and you miss it. Like I did it for like 3 months or something as part of like a work program at school where you had to have a job in order to get credit, and you got to leave early and stuff. And so, yeah, that expectation that work could be fulfilling never computed for me. It was never something that was demonstrated for me, and it was never something that I expected. There was a point where I was going to go into a more artistic field, and maybe I would have got some of that out of that. But my current job it's not hard labor. It's not a difficult job. I use my mind. I don't use my back, but I really don't get any fulfillment out of it. Occasionally I solve a complex problem. I save, a large customer. I work in the internet industry. In a service provider role. And, occasionally a large customer who's having an outage, I solve the problem. And that's pretty cool. It's a cool puzzle to solve, but yeah, I don't get any fulfillment from my work.
Come over to the humanities, people. We don't make any money, but we feel fulfilled.
Right,
or we tell ourselves we feel fulfilled because for the peanuts we make, there's got to be something.
Well, and this is, but this extends into the way that we are. Like I have 1,000 hobbies, and you have one or two. I was going to say 0, but I'm sure you have some hobbies.
Because you insist that reading isn't a hobby.
Sure, yeah. If you want to make that a hobby, that's fine. I don't read because I have mechanical issues with reading. So I'm not judging you for reading, but I could not read as a hobby if I wanted to, because it would be like work to do.
That doesn't make it not a hobby.
And I didn't say that it doesn't make it a hobby. I said you have one or two hobbies.
Anyway.
And that's one of those is reading. What's the other one?
Cleaning up after your ass.
Yeah. So yeah, I seek fulfillment outside of my work life. And like I said, I want to retire the first moment that I can, whether that is 55, 60, 65, whatever the first moment it is financially viable to do so. I want to do so.
I've got news for you. Depending on what happens, that may not.
Sure. And I have been, doing the thing you're supposed to do, putting money away for retirement and all that kind of crap. So yeah, unless somebody ruins that, like they may or may not be doing right now, depending on when you're listening to this. Yeah. I am much closer to Daniel than I am to Tom, for sure. Like I would love to be that guy. And there's probably a version of me in the multiverse that didn't meet someone and didn't have kids and is out there skating by, I would say, though, I independently decided to make something of myself prior to meeting you. So it isn't like I shaped up and was like, oh, I can't work at UPS my whole life. Working at UPS was a means to an end. They have the Teamsters there have negotiated some very generous education benefits, and it allowed me to go to school for the networking that I do now as an adult, as a proper taxpayer and all that. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I wouldn't have made anything of myself if I didn't have a family to support, because I was already making something of myself before I had a family to support. But yeah, I think there's a version of me out there that is just sort of still working at a video store, because in that universe, VHS was the dominant format, and
right,
and never went away. So I'm still working in a video store, and and just kind of, you know, taking home screener movies and on the weekend and just hanging out and, you know, just chilling and riding the wave of life. And then there's this version, the Prime version of me, which is here in the Prime universe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, you have a point about the different, I would say it's a socioeconomic difference. There is I don't want to say it's a class level thing, but it is, where
100%.
you view work as a necessary evil.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another level where you view it as you have the luxury of choosing something that you enjoy or that fulfills you, or, you know, anything like that. And yeah, not everybody can afford to seek happiness during their working life. But, you know, when we talk to our teenager about choosing work, what I say is sometimes, you know, your life is going to need some fulfillment. Some people find that at work and some people don't, but they find it on the weekends, whatever. Like, I still don't think that your working life has to be constant drudgery, and even yours isn't, because you have, as you said, you have these hobbies that go in. So I don't know. It just seems, I don't know. It seems judgy to be like, well, you're not doing anything with your life. I would be miserable with your life, so clearly your life sucks. Like, not everybody has to travel abroad to be fulfilled. Like,
but within the context of the movie, I think that the thing that Daniel can see is something that Tom can't see until he gets done with his journey, which is that he isn't happy with the life that he has. He isn't happy in this post-marriage retirement, you know, near retirement life that he has. He's not actually happy. He's fooling himself into thinking he's doing the responsible thing, and therefore he's right. Like, I got patients to think about. I got business, but the patients survive without him. And clearly, you know, and yeah, I think, and I also think there is a responsible person always looks at a person who is not responsible, but is still somehow getting by. And there is some amount of malice that you feel towards that person. Like, I'm, you know, working 40 plus hours a week. I'm paying my taxes. I'm saving for retirement. I'm doing all these things. Here's this guy who's doing none of those things, seems way happier than I am.
So it's sour grapes.
Way more fulfilled. Yeah, way more fulfilled than I am. Like, this isn't like, one of your big things is, I did everything the way that I was supposed to do it. Yeah. And I didn't get the result that I was promised I would get.
Yeah.
You know, like, I followed all the instructions and the pie still doesn't look right. Yeah. Sometimes the person who is just like loosey-goosey with the measurements produces an award-winning pie, and you follow everything down to the microgram, and yours, you know, falls apart in the oven or something. Yeah. And I think that there's a certain amount of growth that has to happen on the part of the responsible person to let go of some of that stuff, you know.
Well,
and I think there's an appropriate time, and I think there's potentially Daniel is arguing that it is the appropriate time for his dad. Like, obviously Daniel couldn't be where he is without his dad having done the responsible thing for all those years. And is there a point at which you're trying to physically or verbally or otherwise shake somebody and go like, okay, you can stop now.
Yeah.
Like, you've done everything you're supposed to do.
Yeah. It's time to switch paths. Well, that's fair. Well, and, you know, you mentioned Tom is in his sort of post-marriage life. We don't have any indication of what he was like when he was married, or what his wife was like, or what their relationship was like, anything like that. At one point, I think he's looking through Daniel's things, and there's a photo album with pictures of his parents. So Tom sees himself with his late wife, and he just bursts into tears. Fun fact, that is his actual wife in the pictures. And so there's a lot in here about grief, which is very not made explicit, really. But we don't know when his wife died, but I imagine there's some, you know, like, you retreat into work and your sort of boring hobbies to avoid getting hurt by anything else. Like, that's part of it. And Yeah, and now come to think of it, I would have liked to see that fleshed out a little bit more. Because this was the first time I'd seen this in a while, and so my experience with grief is a little bit more complex now than it was last time I saw it, and I teared up a lot more at various points than I remember doing in the past. So there's the grief portion of this is not insignificant. It's woven in nicely, but it's definitely
I mean, it's essentially the entire movie is about grief on some level, but it's not. They don't hit you over the head with it.
No.
Yeah, it's woven in artfully.
Yeah. Well, I always like things to be a little more explicit than this, but you get there. So, well, speaking of grief and the grief experiences of all the other pilgrims, so my favorite of all the pilgrims, and I just wanted to give him a big hug, is Joost from Amsterdam. He always introduces himself. He says he's on the Camino to lose weight. For his brother's third wedding is coming up and he doesn't want to have to buy a new suit. But then he also says his wife won't have sex with him because he's too fat.
Oh.
And, just sort of, you see moments where he's just like, they check into a nice hotel at one point, and they all have their own rooms and they're luxuriating in the, creature comforts, and he gets room service and he's just sort of sitting there in a bathrobe and you can see his belly and he's just sort of sad about all this food. And, I was just like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
Here.
And Joost is European fat.
Yeah.
He's not American fat.
Right. Yeah, he just has a belly.
He's fat in the same way that Ricky Gervais is fat in The Office, in the British Office where everyone calls him fat, and he's like a 42 waist. He wears a XL t-shirt. It's that kind of fat.
Well, I don't know.
Joost might be a 2X. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and he's being Dutch. He's got all the drugs apparently. Yeah. So when he meets everybody, he's like, "Here, you want some hash?"
But I'm sure also
he's very popular.
Yeah, he's very popular, and I'm sure he's fat from Amsterdam.
I think of the Dutch as tall and lean, very and because they walk
svelte people
and bike everywhere. Yes. I mean, I think just genetically they are very tall, but also very, very lean. But the funny thing about that actor, did you ever see the Rooney Mara version of Girl with a Dragon Tattoo?
Yes.
He's the guy who assaults her.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not placing that
so,
now. I'm not like, oh, exactly. I remember him. Yeah. No, I mean, I remember that character. Of
yes.
course.
I think I saw that one after I saw this. And I was like, oh my God, it's Joost. Oh, no, no. Like polar opposite from this character.
Yeah. Well, it's like every time you see the lust guy from Seven, you're like, it's the guy that wore the thing.
Who's the lust guy?
The guy that wears the thing.
I don't know. I've seen Seven. I just don't remember.
He's an actor that is just in 1,000 movies. So you see him all the time. And every time I see him, I'm like, oh, it's the lust guy from Seven.
Yeah.
Or it's the guy with the mouse from The Green Mile.
Yeah.
The second Mr. Elmo's buddy.
Mr. Noodle?
Mr. Noodle. Yeah.
See, and Mr. Noodle is the one that I was telling you about that was Olivia Benson's therapist on SVU.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah, when you see him, you're like, I'm always like, it's the guy from, or actually what I'm like is, it's the assistant coach from Evening Shade. Because for some reason, my mom, we had one television, for a long time. So I watched every nighttime soap opera, Northern Exposure, Evening Shade. Like I saw them all.
Yeah.
And so then for whatever reason, like that's where my mind is that guy, Michael, something with a C. I can't remember his name.
I don't know.
But that's where my mind goes every time. Like, it's the assistant coach from, just like Dauber is always going to be Dauber.
Sure.
From Coach, that kind of thing.
Anyway, laws, yes.
Anyway.
So Joost, the actor, has range because he can play this sweet, kind Dutchman and a sadistic villain.
Yes.
But here he's the nice guy. But he's the one who Tom meets first, and he kind of picks up on some various context clues, and he knows what the box of ashes is, and he kind of mentions it to the other pilgrims, I think intending to be like, dude, tread lightly. This is, and they do not. They just like, so sorry about your son. What's the rules? And it's just like, oh my God, you guys. And then Tom unloads on him and yells at him, which is, not incorrect thing to do, but like he meant it well. I don't know. I want to give Yost a hug.
Yeah, I mean he's every bit the lovable doofus character.
Yeah. And at the end, you'll be happy to know, maybe at the end he says, "I'll just buy a new suit for the wedding. That's fine."
Yeah.
And one hopes that he goes back and says to his wife, like, "Listen, you love me or you don't, whatever. I love myself, so
yeah,
go away if you don't want to. I don't know. I'll be finding somebody else.
Get out."
Yeah. Not that I'm in favor of breaking up a marriage, but like his wife sounds terrible, so no. Hope he meets a cute girl at his brother's wedding in his nice suit. And then the only female pilgrim there is Sarah, who I think is Canadian, and she comes off as brittle, so she and Tom actually are kind of a good match. And it turns out that she's left an abusive marriage. Now, how recently we can't really tell. And she kind of pokes fun at Tom from the beginning, calling him a boomer and all this stuff. And I was like, I don't think Martin Sheen's a boomer. I think he's older than that, but whatever. This was an early version of we call everybody a boomer to insult them.
Yeah.
Just like our kid calls us boomers. And I'm like, no, we're not
quite.
No. Your grandparents are the boomers.
Yeah, we're almost millennials.
Yeah. But, and so it turns out Sarah has some PTSD from this relationship. At one point, Tom grabs her, not intending harm, but just, and she socks him. Like she's used to being hit by men for a lot of things. And she talks about how she unattendedly got pregnant, and she realized she could not bring a baby into this relationship, and so she terminated the pregnancy. And she says, I can hear her voice. And that, I have not been in that situation, thankfully, but that was heartbreaking to see too. Like, because we give a lot of lip service to abortion being the right choice for women because it removes them from unhealthy situations, but sometimes it doesn't, or sometimes like it may be the right choice, but it's not a happy choice.
Sure.
And there's a lot of leftover feelings. And I think abortion rights activists don't do the movement any favors when they just ignore that part of it, or they try to say that doesn't exist. I think the pro-life activists are really pushing this. All women who have abortions regret it. And that's not true either, but it's there's a lot of gray area that neither side admits, and that just broke my heart.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, on the one hand, it's impossible to have nuance when you're since the day it was passed, you've literally been fighting to defend it, from these sort of intrusive laws that are, they're poll tax, Jim Crow style laws that are designed to, well, you do have the right, but the doctor needs admitting privileges at the local hospital, and the hallways need to be wide enough to so that two gurneys can pass and people can pass all at once, and these sort of things, so I think it is difficult to have that, that sort of, to be able to do that, right? Like there's a world that where a version of our world where everybody was just like, all right, cool. And we went on to the quote unquote pro-life movement became a pro-life movement. They advocated for adoption, and they advocated for funding adoptions
and an end to the death penalty.
They advocated for an end to the death penalty. They advocated for school lunches, pre-K, after school care. They actually did the things that you need to do to enable to make the choice easy, right? Like there is a world where non-elective abortions don't need to exist, right? Where the options are just so plentiful, and the support is so deep that the cases in which someone would choose an abortion are almost unanimously medically necessary or other extenuating circumstances.
Well, and we should point out, apropos of this, and no man would think of being violent toward a woman that he is in a relationship with.
Yeah.
And if a woman wanted to leave a violent relationship, she had many, many options and resources, and she could get out and take her child with her.
I mean, there should exist a world where the only thing that people who support abortion and people who are against abortion disagree about is the abortion part.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, all of these other surrounding issues should just be taken care of. Of course, we need universal pre-K. Of course, we need after school and before school care for everybody. You know, like there's to do. A lot of times you hear people offer solutions and you say like, oh, people who make over this or under that. There's a certain period. Those groups get smaller as you go up, especially the financial groups. They get smaller and smaller. If you are giving a couple million people a resource that they don't actually need and probably won't use, and the trade-off is all of the people who really need it get to use it, that's great. Give it to everybody and let those who really need it use it.
Right.
You know, there are tons of my family stubbornly didn't use any sort of assistance, food assistance, housing assistance, anything that my mom would have certainly qualified for. But it was a pride thing. And that and that was a demonized thing. So, but we living in a world where all of these benefits are available to everybody, there's no stigma to taking them. And like you say, it just comes down to, like I said, it's just one issue that they disagree on. Instead, someone who is pro-abortion, we'll use pro-abortion, is also pro school lunch and it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that all of the things that help mothers bring these babies into the world are favored by the people who also support the ability to end that pregnancy, and the people who want to enforce that pregnancy and are anti-abortion are the ones who for some reason don't want to lift a finger after that fact.
Yeah. Or they will say, "Oh no, I want these things." Okay, but you're voting for the people who don't want them. So miss me with that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I think that she is feeling. I said all that to set up the saying. I think some of what she is feeling is the guilt that's inherently pushed by the anti-abortion activist who categorizes were it more normalized. You wonder if someone would have a story like that. Oh, I hear her voice. Would there be some regret? Would there be some?
Well, I'm quite sure that's based on a real person.
Oh, almost certainly. But I'm saying it's one of those conditioned things, right? Of was she told so many times that she was bad for doing it that she developed this sort of coping mechanism?
Well, maybe
chicken egg kind of thing.
Maybe, yeah. But one thing that I have learned is the right choice does not always feel good. And something feeling good does not make it the right choice. But I think strictly logically, you can see how that is a right choice for her. But doesn't mean it feels good. Doesn't, she's good. I don't think that guilt and grief are necessarily a sign that she's been brainwashed, but I see your point. So
there are people who put their animals down, who are terminally ill, who, have similar, I hear his bark. I feel like he's licking me awake every morning. Yeah. It's the right choice. It's the, but it doesn't make it the easy choice, and it doesn't mean that there won't be any guilt, whether it's justified or not, that won't exist.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think she's an interesting character. I do think that they don't do her any favors with the boomer stuff, but I get why they do it. If you want someone to be harsh and then
soften,
reveal their chewy center, they have to have a hard exterior to begin with. And I don't know what it was, but that actress, I wasn't loving her line deliveries. They almost seemed overdubbed.
Oh, maybe she's got kind of because I can't remember now what else I've seen her in, but she's a character actress, so you've seen her in a bunch of things.
Yeah.
Deborah Kara Unger is her name. She's got kind of a haughty edge to her. Like, not necessarily haughty as in like an 1890s society lady looking down her nose, but just, there's something about her. She doesn't come across as warm and fuzzy, which I don't think the character is, but
I wonder if I wonder if that's a limitation on her part as an actor, or if that is her really doing the character. Because there's a thing right now at this moment in time to really shit on Gal Gadot's line deliveries in movies. You know, like,
I feel like that's for other reasons, though.
Well, I don't. Is it?
I think she's getting a lot of hate for where she comes from.
But where does she come from?
Israel.
Oh, no. But I mean, this has been a thing for a while.
Okay.
There's, and it's just, and she doesn't have a lot of range. They're not wrong. But it felt like that kind of thing. It felt like a delivery that was devoid of the mechanical ability to deliver the lines any differently. And I think that's what it is with Godot. I think English is not her first language. She has an accent, whatever. I think she's doing it her best. I think this actress here is doing her best. It was never, and it doesn't help that you're up against, Martin Sheen. Yeah. And his, and even the other two actors that she's paired with most of the time, I think they are all, and maybe it's this, the other two actors, Jack and for Yost, are wacky on some level or over the top. Yeah. And they're allowed to go places and maybe her direction was explicitly to be like a foil to them, to always be, monotone line deliveries and keep things short and curt and like. Yeah.
She's extremely calm all the time, even when she's talking about the traumatic things with her ex and she's.
Yeah. And that was kind of one of the things that was kind of keying me, in of like, maybe she just can't do it, because she's telling these things that should be emotional and they're not, for me, landing with the same kind of emotion because she's not either capable of delivering with that emotion or she's just not doing it. Well, and it's very possible that she is giving the director exactly what he asked her to give him. Like, that's the thing with actors. And, it would be interesting maybe to see some of her other stuff. That's the thing a lot of times with actors. Like, a good actor can give a bad performance if he's coached to give a bad performance. Yeah. And I'm not saying her performance is bad overall. It was just of the quartet. She was the one that always that I believed the least. She sounded the most like an actor giving lines, and the other three embodied their characters and felt like, whatever the actor's name is for Jack, he felt like Jack. Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, this is an actor playing Jack. And the same thing with Yost and the same thing with Tom. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, at the same time, though, I think, and I would say second to Tom, grief is most explicit for her. And not everybody behaves the same way. Yeah. When they're grieving. And I think it could be too expected to see a woman be over the top with her emotions.
Yeah, and that's why. That's why
a nice little flip.
That's why I think it's very possible that Emilio was like, "Hey, look, you're the only female in this group. I don't want you to be this stereotypical weepy female. Like, you're actually going to be the toughest one. So I want you playing this emotionally distant. I want you playing this stilted. I want you playing this like you're keeping distance all the time. Like, even when you start to." Even near the end, when they start to kind of come together and when they, gel and bond as a group, finally, she's still kind of playing it that way. And it's very possible that he is like, look, I don't want to do this emotional woman thing. You are a tough character. You're the strongest of the group, that sort of thing. So it's 100% possible. Like I said, she may be delivering the, excuse me, delivering the performance she was asked to deliver.
Yeah. Another point about her, I appreciate that there was no romance.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. Yeah.
There's a point when they're all in the hotel, what we're supposed to, like, they all have privacy and peace and quiet, and one by one they all are like, they're lonely, and so they all go to Tom's room and they just hang out, and she goes there first. And at one point she's kind of like draped over the sofa seductively, and it would be real easy for there to be a thing there, but there's absolutely none. And I appreciate that, not only because that would be a very unhealthy relationship, but I'm always glad when there's an opportunity for romance and the movie is just like, nope, that's not the movie. No, that's not what we're doing.
Oh, for sure.
So Jack is kind of my least favorite of the four. I think just he feels like a cliche.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think he's maybe supposed to be. I think Jack is also supposed to be the fakest one. I think, Tom is guarding himself and his grief. Sarah is putting on a tough exterior. Yost is 100% being himself, and Jack is 100% bullshit. He's in a field, giving a soliloquy
to a scarecrow or something.
He's always talking and writing in his book and being over dramatic. I mean, to me, he reads as the guy who is supposed to be 100% fake. At first he's a writer, and then he's got writer's block, and he's writing his great, he's here to unblock his writer's block so he can write his great, piece, his great masterwork. And then you find out he's just a travel writer. He's just a freelance travel writer who sells stuff to magazines and guidebooks. And basically, like the guy, I'm not saying that there is, but I'm saying he starts out, I'm a writer, I've got the writer's block and blah, blah, blah. And you think that he's writing his magnum opus, and it's just his next assignment that he's got to write about the Camino that's just going to go in the stupid little guidebook for Ireland or whatever, that they all have this guidebook that is right and wrong in places and has good information and bad information. And he's just writing an entry for one of those guidebooks. He's just writing one of those guidebooks, essentially is what it kind of comes out, that he's just some travel writer. Like he's not writing a great novel. He's not writing a great, and maybe it turns into that, I think, is the idea that he starts out with that kind of making them think he's writing this grand thing. And by the end, he is writing this grand thing because he's writing Tom's story. He's writing their story.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think, most great things have very humble beginnings. Yeah. So,
but at the same time, like, I think that's his journey. He goes from 100% bullshit to like 90% authentic, 10% bullshit,
a little bit more personable.
And his character softens. And he, he ends up actually writing something worthy of the fake grandiose writer that he is when they first meet him, because he basically, his journey is, so I think you're supposed to not like him.
Okay. So well done then.
I think there's one of those things when someone says, oh, this was my least favorite character. It's kind of like in wrestling, right? And I think that's something that wrestling has taught me, because as a kid, when my parents took me to wrestling, I didn't know whether it was, real or predetermined or whatever. But my mom always rooted for the bad guys most of the time. And so I gained this appreciation for someone. And then later on, when I found out, how wrestling works, I gained a super appreciation for people whose job it is to make you hate them. And like the skill that takes. And it's the same thing with writing a character that you're not supposed to like, that then has a turn, and by the end, you're kind of like, oh, he's all right. Look, he grew. There's a skill to writing that. There's a skill to doing that as an actor. Being the character that everybody's not supposed to like right away. And, because there's all these different dynamics, Yost is the character that Tom is not supposed to like because he's everything that Tom isn't. And he's a little bit of what Daniel was. And this sort of, and Jack is just this, and Jack is a little bit of what Daniel was. And maybe all three characters are supposed to be a little bit Daniel. But yeah, I wouldn't say that Jack is my favorite character, but I think he's probably on paper, I think I like the journey he goes through the most, because he goes from not authentic at all to mostly authentic by the end.
Okay. The whole idea of, travelers on a road and stories about everybody, kept kept making me think of Canterbury Tales. It's been a long time since I read that, so I don't know how similar it is. But I read in one of the, IMDb entries, whatever, that this is a little bit not based on, but has a lot of similarities with The Wizard of Oz.
Sure.
Which, and I just had to read The Wizard of Oz for school, so I'm like, I don't quite. There's 4 people. Sure, I don't. Someone else is going to have to pull the strings on that and show it. But
I mean, let's workshop that real quick. Tom is Dorothy. He's on a noble quest,
looking for home,
journeying back to home. Yost is maybe the Scarecrow. Because the Scarecrow is kind of the wackiest. I don't know, maybe he's the Cowardly Lion. Jack is the
well,
maybe Jack is the Scarecrow.
Sarah's
the Tin Man because she's trying to rediscover her emotions.
Well, in the order that they meet in the Wizard of Oz is Scarecrow, Tin Man, Lion, and so that would match up with the 3 of them in the movie. So maybe that I don't know. Yeah. I think it's one of those things where like if I think about it too much, it's gone. It's like a soap bubble. Like I just got to look at it in my peripheral vision and be like, okay, I see it. Yeah. So, let's see what else. This is beautiful. It's a gorgeous movie. It was filmed in Spain. Mm-hmm. All the Camino stuff. There's no fake paths or anything. It's not like Brigadoon where they brought in the sod or whatever. So it's gorgeous, and there's lots of scenes at various points along the way that I've seen in the guidebooks and all these things. And there's a little bit about some of the mores of being on the Camino, and then at one point Jack is going on about the true pilgrim spirit would be blah, 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 blah. And that's when Tom is drunk off his ass and he says, "Christ, you're a bore." And I just want to be like, yes, speaks my language, and then Tom loses it and gets arrested for public drunkenness.
There's some great scenery. I feel like this movie, I know it's not shot on videotape, but the quality is lacking in a lot of ways. I'm sure it's 2010, so I'm sure it's HD and all that. But there's something about the beauty shots that aren't quite, maybe they didn't do like a big color grade on it or something. But I feel like this movie was made today. You would have drone shots and you would have flyovers and you would, and everything would be, you'd have HDR and everything would pop. And that was the only thing I found myself wanting of like, yeah, man, if this movie was made like 5 or 10 years later, these visuals would have just popped better.
True. Well, a lot of the weather, like literally the weather when they're walking, it's very gray and bleak. And I think at some point I figured out the calendar and it's in like October, November. So just, and geography wise, like they're not set up for good weather.
Maybe that's on purpose. Sometimes you need to watch a movie a couple of times to really get inside of the mind of a director. And maybe that's on purpose. Maybe the movie is drab and the lighting is kept muted. There's this thing with photography when you record footage, which I've been doing a lot of lately. You can shoot in what's called RAW, and RAW looks horrible, but RAW retains all of the data, all of the color data, so that you can add what's called a LUT on top, which then brings out all the colors. So it doesn't look like the colors are there when you look at a RAW file. It looks muted and washed out, but the data is actually there, and you can bring it out with filters and bring it out with color grading. And that's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of like a raw untreated footage. And maybe he's doing that on purpose, because if I think about it now, the early parts of the journey, everything's very drab and raw looking, raw as in the format. And by the end, when they get to the ocean, the color is brighter and the sun is out and the blues of the ocean are popping. So it's very possible that I'm looking at it as a failing, and it might, again, like with Sarah, it might be a specific artistic choice from Emilio or from his cinematographer or whatever. So it's very possible. Now that I think about it, it actually could be intentional that they're making it so drab, because Tom's journey is a fairly
Things,
solemn one.
similar to the Wizard of Oz. The
Yeah.
color has to come, except
Color
this time
comes
it's
in when-
slowly. So,
Yes.
yeah. Well, I think that's the way. I think we've gotten to the end of the journey.
Oh man, we did it.
Yeah. Well, folks, we would love to know your thoughts about The Way, or the Camino. If you've seen this or if you've walked the Camino and you have stuff to share with us, let us know. You can get in touch with us a couple different ways. You can email us at ysmypodcast@gmail.com. That's ysmypodcast, ysmy for You Show Me Yours. We're also on Facebook, same handle. You can DM us, or on our feed, you can find links to the latest episodes. We typically have new episodes every other Wednesday. So 2 weeks from today, no matter when you're listening, there'll be a new episode. Except in the month of April, we have an episode every week to mark after the first date month. And next week, Dave will be hosting. And what are we watching next week, Dave?
I'm torn. I'm going to say what we're watching is Ex Machina.
Okay.
And that might change.
Okay.
I've been looking for movies, and there's a couple of possibilities, but Ex Machina is one, like The Way, that's been on my list of after the first date movies for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of want to get it out. I think there's interesting stuff to talk about in it, about AI and gender roles and all the sorts of stuff. So I think it'll be a fun conversation one way or the other. But if I can think of a movie that is more fun, because that was my thing. I was like, I want to do something that isn't so heavy after this.
Yeah, this seems like one of those movies that's going to leave me a desiccated husk.
Maybe
Not quite as bad as Mandy, but
No, it's not. It's not like that.
Okay.
No. So Ex Machina as of right now, as of recording this.
Oh, okay.
And you may find a different episode next time in your feed.
Okay. So we make no promises, but we'll see. Well, then tune in next time for Ex Machina or not. In the meantime, this has been You Show Me Yours. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. The You Show Me Yours theme song is Uplifting Electronic Indie by Winnie the Moog from filmmusic.io.